moving on to the feature bout, but the people's main event, perhaps.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Paddy Pimblett, in his second outing in the UFC, he ultimately gets the first round submission after weathering a slight storm early over Kazula Vargas. Now, Dominic, I guess we'll just start here by talking about the performance
Hmm.
from Paddy Pimblett, and just a little bit about the reaction he got from the crowd. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's clear that in the UK, in that market, he could be a star. It's actually he seems he's already a star, but he could become something very big for the UFC potentially. Should they utilize him the proper way, get him I'm not going to say they're going to like pity, patty cake his matchups. No pun intended there. But it's just I think they could be onto something, and I think they realize that, especially now being over there, because it's like Connor was a big deal when he came in. I'm just comparing for the namesake value.
Mm-hmm.
Connor came in, did good, right? But when he went to Ireland and did a show, that was the moment you're like, oh shit, okay,
Right.
this is big. So I think Patty, that's kind of what this was for him being there in that region in the UK. Performance wise, again, not perfect. He got hurt in his first fight against Luigi. He gets a little banged up here in the beginning against Vargas, but we got to see his grappling, which I was excited to see because he was known kind of for like he has more submission wins than knockouts in
Well,
his
he was
career.
known for very flashy submissions,
Yeah, two
especially
flying
early on.
triangles he's
Yeah.
got. So he got back up because he was on his back for like a minute or two there to start. Lands a beautiful judo throw. It was very nice, and then from there it was smooth sailing. He transitioned right to the back, got the rear naked choke, and he's 2-0 in the UFC, 2 finishes, 2 bonuses. So again, it was a good performance. I'm not like I'm probably a little bit more on it on the Patty thing than you may be, and I'll let you get into it. But still, I have plenty of hesitations left to be had before I really can be like, okay, we're on to something Connor like.
Yeah, when we look at this performance, I mean, this apparently is very typical Paddy. Obviously, I wasn't very familiar with Paddy Pimblett's, Cage Warriors career and whatnot. That's something that I've not been able to indulge myself in. But I've tried to learn more about why people view him so highly, and it's not just the personality or the skill set, but Dominic, each fight is like a story in there's dramatic turns,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess both UFC fights have kind of I mean, really, both UFC fights so far have gone somewhat similar. He gets cracked by a punch from Luigi here with Kazula. Um, in the Luigi fight, it looked like Luigi was winning most of the first round
Yeah,
before Paddy comes back and cracks him and ultimately gets a brutal knockout
yeah,
finish. Here, Kazula Vargas has him on the ground. Paddy's able to get back to his feet, able to do like a judo throw, and then get a submission again in the first round. So I see where the intrigue is. I see where the investment in this guy is. If you
of course.
really have been following him for a while, I can understand why people are so impassioned by Paddy Pimblett. I just personally, I want to watch the best fighters in the world, and I want to be realistic in my evaluation of people.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good win. He did it, in dramatic fashion, but outside of like one punch, and yes, he was on his back for a little bit. I mean, more impressive that he's able to get back to his feet, able to
Yeah,
do. So it's still a win. It's a good win, but both UFC fights still give me a lot of pause, a lot of cause for concern. I do think once he eventually gets to fighting higher skilled, higher level ranked guys, that he's going to run into a lot of problems.
mm-hmm.
And it's up to the UFC and Paddy Pimblett himself to sort of manage that properly, because I keep bringing this name up, but I worry that Paddy Pimblett could be like and I know the star power is different, but just
Right.
bear with me. I worry he could be a Sage Northcutt or a Mickey Gall, one of these guys that's very young, green, but shows some potential. Whether Mickey Gall had the interesting route of being the guy that welcomes CM Punk into the UFC, but he did that with a professional record of 2-0 at the
Yeah.
time. He's had his moments. He's kind of been a 500 guy in the UFC, but nowhere near what people maybe thought was in his future after that win.
Yeah.
Sage Northcutt's an even more probably closer example to Paddy. This was like a wonder kid who everybody thought was going to be like this huge deal.
Yeah.
He had the look, he had the personality, he had the skill, he had a very fun fight style. But the UFC started giving him tougher matchups quicker than they probably should have. And he paid the price for it and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately kind of lost his shine. And now he hasn't fought in like 4 years. So
Yeah.
I just worry something like that could happen with Paddy because let's be honest. I think Friday we both kind of said we thought the Tuporia fight might be on the table. But Dominic, I got to be honest, and people might not like me saying this. That's the last matchup that the UFC or Paddy Pimblett want right now. Ilia Tuporia, if I had to guess, would do some pretty bad things to Paddy Pimblett right now. Paddy Pimblett's still got a lot of improving to do, so I'm sure he will do that. But I'm just being realistic. If he's going to continue to kind of have these beefs with people too, that's another thing. Is like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people want him to fight Tuporia next. So if he keeps, he has this, and I get it. That's part of his charm. Is like he's got the personality that like some people love, some people hate. But he kind of instigated this with Tuporia, at least
Right.
from what I understand from the Twitter exchanges. So if there's no payoff, if it's just shit talking, and then when it comes time to like sign a contract to fight him, he goes like, "Oh, nobody even knows this guy. I don't want to fight him." Well, okay, you can maybe get away with that a couple times, but is he going to continue to kind of make these waves where he gets into these Twitter beefs with? I've even seen him and like Terrence McKinney go at it a time or two.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but do I think he's going to take a fight with Terrence McKinney? No. Eventually, people are going to get tired of like these setups for fights. Like it feels like a good setup, and then there's no payoff.
Yeah. It's going to have to happen eventually.
Because I feel like what's going to happen here is you're going to get his next opponent that's going to be announced whenever will probably be another guy that you don't know much about. He's probably another guy that's, whether it's a guy making a debut from a contender series or someone who's only fought one or two times in the UFC. I don't think he's going to get a Terrence McKinney or a Drew Dober or a Bobby Green or, my God, some people thought we're talking about him fighting Tony Ferguson after his first fight. Like, I'm sorry. It's just reputable people. I mean, we love Robbie Fox, like with Barstool. Yeah. And, he's a big Paddy fan. Obviously, they have Paddy signed. But even him, like a guy who I respect his opinion on, he seems to have inflated Paddy's skill level at this point. And I kind of get it. Like you work with the guy. Like,
yeah.
But it just shows that I think that Paddy does have something here, but it's almost like to his detriment because he has people eating out of the palm of his hand believing that he's like the best thing since sliced bread. But it could also be his ultimate downfall if the UFC start to believe that too and push him into a really tough matchup before he's ready.
Yeah, no, I couldn't help but think as you were going there. My mind immediately kind of linked Paddy to the early days, the early rise of Sugar Sean O'Malley, and the way that he was a big deal, right, from the Contender Series. But they have been relatively careful with how they have matched Sean up so far, making sure that they can build upon this. He had his faltering moment, against Cheeto Vera, where he lost that one, a legitimate loss, by the way. I know Sean says otherwise, but you look at those early fights, 1, 2, 3, 4 fights into the UFC, and he was kind of no big name value really, because even when he lost to Cheeto at that time, Marlon's at a much higher level now, I feel like,
Right.
than what he was when that fight happened. But then you look at, Sean's getting into beef with people on Twitter and calling people out on his podcast and on his Twitch stream and stuff. So there's small relative comparisons between the two. And you're right, when it just comes to, if the UFC wants to fully capitalize on this, which it can be big if they do, they have to be selective and careful with Paddy. But at the same time, again, kind of like what I kind of said, is eventually we're going to have to see one of these rivalries come to fruition in the cage. We're going to have to see him get tested ultimately. So it's just like, when could it happen,
There are a lot of people are wanting this, the slow build.
Yeah.
And I agree.
Yeah.
But the UFC has also never really been a promotion that does gimme matchups or
Right.
gimme fights. They pride themselves on pairing the best of the best against the best of the best. And if you can't cut it, then you're not going to stick around long.
Yeah.
So when I hear people going, I've heard people say on the other end of that, well, that they want more gimme matchups, like for someone like Paddy Pimblett to kind of grow in, kind of like what Bellator does with their young stars. They let them really fight the guys that are well below their caliber, but it gives them experience.
Right.
It helps them build up their talent, build up the star power, And I've heard people say, well, why don't we have more matchups like that in the UFC? Like it's building, like it's doing good things for this fighter. If the UFC did it for everybody, that's fine. But I definitely don't want them to do it just for Paddy Pimblett or
like
just for
favorites.
To me that's worse than not doing that at all. Like I understand for business that would probably be the best move, but again, his mouth is writing checks that I don't think he can keep. That he can't cash. There it is. And it's going to catch up to him eventually, unless maybe he will surprise me. But I mean, I think that Tuporia fight, I think that was, it got a lot of eyes on him. And I think a lot of people were expecting that fight next. A lot of people who are, Barstool people, they don't know who Ilia Tuporia is.
Yeah.
So they are like kind of thinking Paddy's going to smash this dude. And then when Paddy's like, well, I'm not actually going to fight him next, they're kind of like, well, why wouldn't you, Paddy? Like you could beat the shit out of them. And sorry guys, not quite the story there.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about Ilia later, and you'll see why that might not happen next.
Yeah. Now before we get